Welcome to another episode of Critical Hits. I'm Rob Flax. I'm joined, as always, by my wonderful co-host, Frank Salerno. And we got a special episode for you guys this week. We had the ECAC Valorant Tournament this Monday, and we have all the highlights, all of our takes, and all of our bracket predictions that did or didn't end up coming true. No spoilers on who was right or wrong. You got to watch the whole show to hear that. But we're going to get into that right now, and we're going to start it off with the brackets. Frank, how did this one end up playing out?
Well, yeah, we had a lot of fun matchups to watch, and we'll take a look at the bracket here and see how some of the big matchups early on and what happened towards the end as well. Now, in the first round, we had a couple of first-round buys, but the biggest matchup to note was the Wayne State Wildcats taking on Stockton University. For one, this matchup would launch a long run in the tournament for the Stockton team, and they would eventually make it to the finals. But for Wayne State, we discussed on the preview show how they were looking to not get first-rounded once again, maybe a little bit of unluckiness when it comes to seeding in this tournament, but they weren't able to break that curse. They did not get their first ECAC Valorant Tournament win.
And in the second round, Wildcat Esports of SUNY Poly put up a pretty good fight against the former champion, Stevenson University, but they were unable to take out the Mustangs, falling to them pretty decisively. We had the opportunity to talk to Dems out of the Wildcat squad along with their team captain, and you'll hear about that later in the episode with some cool information about how they got involved in esports and how you can too, and just how new their roster was coming into this tournament.
In the third round, the semifinals, it was a battle of four great teams. In one match, the reigning runner-ups, the Sacramento State Hornets, were taken out by a very strong Stockton University team on the back of big playmaking from players Matthias and Large One. On the other side of the bracket, the champions fell. Team Bootleg got their revenge from June's ECAC tournament, taking out the defending champion Stevenson University and moving on to the finals against the Stockton squad.
And in those finals, it was back and forth. It was competitive. It was a great game to watch. But the synergy of Team Bootleg, the team that's been around the longest, the one that is the most comfortable with their current roster, you could really tell that. And those returning four players were just able to communicate in a way that Stockton wasn't. They out-rotated them. They outshot them. And with Team Bootleg winning that final match at 13-9, they have now become the new ECAC Valorant champions. Norda1 and Yuki led the way with a strong performance, and on those Bind picks, that map seemed to have dominated the tournament, and Bind was the map that they won the tournament on, so a commanding victory for them. And we're going to take a look at some of the best plays and some of the highlights from that match a little later on.
All right, Rob, so we know how the tournament ended up, but going into the weekend, like you mentioned, we both had individual picks. I myself picked Team Bootleg, who ended up becoming the champions, so, you know, I don't want to brag, but
you've only brought that up a few times, but
only a few.
Yeah, I had a great pick. I had a team that got a bye from the first round and lost the second. That was Albany. But Frank, I'm going to explain to the people, the lovely viewers here, exactly why I picked it. Okay. Now, Albany was actually able to win a separate ECAC tournament revolving around a Riot Games video game, but that was the League of Legends tournament. And what I was going to pick as the Riot Games special, being able to win both the Riot Games tournament for League of Legends and the tournament for Valorant. That's why I was rooting for Albany. Unfortunately, Albany's roster was really communicating and really playing like a team that had just hopped off of solo queue. 5 players really just playing together. Didn't even seem like they had voice comms. They were not getting the information from the kills. It was really just not a good game to watch. It really seemed like this was a team that was just simply not up to the level of the tournament. So, you know, maybe in the future they can get a better roster, train this one up, but that was not the team that they were going to show up to perform with.
Yeah, and the thing about college esports as well is like there's so many new students coming in who they may be a new incoming student at Albany who they haven't even met yet, who might be a help to the program. And that's something that, you know, we've touched on a little bit with college esports, people coming in and out all the time just because of the nature of college, 4 years in and out. That's usually like the standard. Some of these schools as well being community colleges and short-term programs are more of 2 years as well. So the rosters might change even more fluently. I picked Team Bootleg to win because I saw that 4 of the 5 players on that roster from the June tournament were returning. And it turned out that may have been a recipe for success for Team Bootleg, as we saw that they won that match. I just feel like especially only having a few months of prep before this tournament, in a brand new game, bring back 4 people who just know each other, how each other play, what agents they play the best. I felt that you had such a competitive advantage, and it's not to say there's other teams in this tournament who maybe were playing for a long time before that we hadn't realized because of they weren't participating in the June tournament. But I just felt it was a strong pick, taking the experience and the teamwork, maybe over individual skill, and it worked out for me.
Absolutely. Very important part of analysis. Pattern recognition. They won before. That's to say they won't win again. And that's exactly what happened here. And we're going to hear about exactly how they did it a little later on. But what I want to focus on, Frank, a game that I thought was actually very interesting to watch was between Wildcats and Stevenson, which I believe was a pretty good series too. Yeah. Now the Wildcats did fall in that series, but they put up a pretty good fight right up until the moment that they kind of started falling apart. And we got to speak with them. And here's what they said that they unfortunately could not do and what Stevenson was able to do against them. We are talking with Wildcat Esports and MDMs from the team. So guys, you just came back from this Valorant tournament. I want to hear your immediate reactions. How do you guys think the tournament went? What do you guys think of your performance?
I'm very satisfied, considering we had just put the team together last night. We had to sub in someone who didn't really know Valorant, and he had ping issues, which became a big problem second game. But they played really well. I don't want to take that away from them. But I'm very satisfied. We got one win.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I'm curious how you guys went about kind of building your team composition. Were you guys just kind of playing what you felt individually you guys were strongest as, or did you kind of have a plan going in on who would be playing?
When we were queuing last night, because we couldn't set up a scrim or anything, we just queued competitive. We always just got bind as a result. So when we had our map pick, we just went bind.
And how did you go about selecting agents? Did everyone just kind of play their strengths?
Yeah, everyone played their strengths because it's hard. It's fresh new team, like not even 24 hours old. So we just played what we were comfortable with.
Right. So
I wanted to play Jet, but everyone says I'm throwing when I play Jet. So.
We've all been there. So you know what? How about you settle a disagreement between me and Frank here? In our preview show, we said that having a team thrown together at the last second just because the game is so new wouldn't necessarily be as much of a detriment as it would be in further along in the season or stuff like that. Do you guys feel that your team has a lot of room to grow and you're confident with this roster? Do you think this is what you guys are going to keep going forward, or do you think there's going to be a little bit more of throwing in new players and just seeing what sticks with the mechanics?
We're definitely gonna have to. Well, I kind of want to hear Joe's opinion on this, because I'm not in charge of the roster or anything. So
since technically we're not in our semester right now, our team is pretty thrown together. Usually we would do some form of tryouts and select the roster that way. So definitely this is kind of a pre-tryout. I was happy with what I saw today. I thought everyone did very well. So yeah, everyone has room to grow, but likely our finalized roster will not be exactly what our team was today.
So I'm curious as to, obviously a lot of people in college interested in joining teams like this, and a lot of people interested in esports. What are you looking for out of someone maybe who's like a freshman coming in, who might want to join a collegiate esports team? What are you looking out of them? Like, what are you looking for in the tryouts? What kind of personality are you looking for?
Yeah, so in tryouts, you definitely team chemistry is a big deal. I would say it's about 50% of it, if not more, than just raw skill, because you want to look for players who have potential to grow, and you don't want your team to just be the best they can be right away. You want to make sure you pick a roster that supports each other and gives each other like constructive criticism. But definitely you want to make sure you have a noticeable shot caller on your team and just people on your team that are good communicators, because especially in a game like Valorant, you need to be able to communicate with callouts and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So
I think I want to the emphasize for when looking for new players for a team, it's the mindset of how they want to learn. Because it's a hard mindset to have, like taking every loss as a lesson. I know when we do VOD reviews for a previous Overwatch team I was on, like no one wanted to do the losses, but it needs to be the mindset. They need to have the mindset, positive mindset the entire time. Losses are always lessons.
Absolutely. So you mentioned that like that learning opportunity. So what is something you're looking for in those VOD reviews? If you were going to go back against the Stevenson game, would it be necessarily, oh, the rush site, we should have gone for B, or maybe we stayed too long in A long? Just what are those criteria that you're looking for in that VOD review? And just in general, what do you think was Stevenson's strength in that game?
What I'm looking for is someone who, because this happens to me all the time, where during a VOD review, if a newer-ish player to a competitive scene just like is getting criticized, they'll like defend themselves, they'll explain their mindset, and like it makes sense to them without really accepting the criticism. That's, I find, really hard to improve on when you have someone like that. And Stevenson, I could just tell they were more in sync. They understood the flow of the game better. Like their takes were like all at the same time, whereas like our team was a little bit off sync, and that made the difference on some pushes.
So one thing you mentioned is how you came from playing Overwatch, and one thing we were talking about the other day, Rob and I, was a little bit about the Overwatch and CS:GO, I guess, debate about which players are currently better, and obviously in the professional scene, there's a big rivalry kind of centered around that. What have you seen as like strengths and maybe even weaknesses of people coming from those like two sides of the spectrum when it comes to the players in Valorant right now?
So I play like most of the competitive FPSs, CS:GO, Overwatch, Valorant, all that. I noticed, which is I think is the most essential part. Obviously, like the most beneficial game to be coming into this from is Counter-Strike, simply because of knowing dying during a push is like it's inevitable. Like, and making value off a teammate's death is the entire game when it comes to pushes. And I noticed like a lot, and this is a big issue with especially when you go in unrated. People are just afraid of dying. Their teammate who's played CS flashes entry frags and then dies, and then everyone's pushed back.
Absolutely. So you're mentioning that. What do you think is some sort of skill that could be carried over from not just Counter-Strike, but you mentioned your experience in Overwatch? Is it being able to call out abilities and like whose ultimate is on cooldown, whose round is, whose actually ability is actually coming up? Like with Raze, you can hear her ultimate, and I mean at this point, if you're getting hit by her ultimate with the call out, you're just asleep at the wheel. But so like what type of, is there some skill with Overwatch, do you feel, or maybe I'm wrong about that, but what do you think from Overwatch kind of translates to Valorant as well?
It definitely applies in a more abstract sense, I think, where sometimes like things don't go according to plan, like most of the time they don't go to plan. You're never gonna push a site, like we're gonna wall this, we're gonna smoke this, we're gonna nade this, and everything is gonna go perfectly. We're gonna hold the site, we're gonna defend the retake. Like that like nothing's gonna happen. Things are gonna go wrong, or Raze is gonna throw a nade where you don't want. And it's adapting to that where I think where Overwatch players can benefit from.
Absolutely. I was wondering if you guys would be able to share what you think is the competitive tier list for agents at the moment.
I think I only really have one comment on that. I think Viper is a mega sleeper.
Okay.
And once people like learn like every single lineup there is, she'll be like insane. Cause she has 2 mollies, her smoke is infinite. Technically, her wall has a lot of value, but it's just that utilizing it takes a lot of coordination.
Got it.
I remember the first game we played against I can't remember off the top of my head right now, but I saw that they had a Viper, and I lost a lot of hope because that meant to me that they have strategies, and we would not be able to do anything about that. Since I think Viper takes a lot of coordination. So if you're running a Viper, you have a plan.
Yeah, so what was kind of like the way you guys got around that? You said you were a little worried at first when you saw Viper. Well, what did you guys do in that first game against Ken and that got you the win?
I reshot them in the head better than they could. That's all I can really say.
All right.
Gotcha. There was an interesting eco round that I saw there. you mentioned like the coordination and, you know, having new players that are not necessarily familiar with Valorant. How do you explain to players like when an eco round needs to happen, especially if they're not coming from that Counter-Strike background, and really like you only have X amount of money? How do you put like the best resources on your best player? Do you maybe go for an op if you know you have a guy who can just hit 3 headshots and, like you said, shoot them in the head a little better than some other people can? What's like their game plan for those eco rounds where you only have so much, like, you know, so much money to play with? So
I don't really have a sense on that yet as a player. So the general plan usually is just like, you know, make sure you can buy next round if you can't like all get phantoms or vandals. You always just want to be able to buy next round. I don't. There was one point second game we were just like, all right, we have to force here, and I think we won that too. So I guess I have to look out for those situations more where like it's obvious you need to go for. It's not obvious you need to buy, but sometimes you need to buy where it looks like you need to save. If that makes sense.
Yeah. Okay, guys, thank you so much for joining us on this episode of Critical Hits. I just wanted to know if you guys had any sort of shout outs you guys wanted to make, maybe to your program, maybe to where people can go and watch your streams. Is there anything you guys want to plug?
So I would just say, well, thanks for having us on. And Wildcat Esports actually just started last semester officially, so we're growing pretty big. If you're in the SUNY area, if you happen to be thinking about going to SUNY Poly, we'd be more than happy to have you. Our
SUNY
program
Poly is a gamer haven.
It's very accepting
a gamer haven
of new players, and yeah, we're just trying to grow as much as we can.
And follow me on social media. It's mdems or mdems_.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys for joining us. It was a lot of fun, and best of luck the rest of the season.
All right, thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you for having
See
us.
you guys.
All right, we want to say thank you to Wildcat Esports, those guys, for coming on right after their round 2 loss in the tournament on August 10th. It was really nice of them to join us. And, you know, sometimes after a loss, it can be tough, but they had really good positivity. They seem like they have high hopes and are excited to grow Valorant as a part of their program, as a part of the ECAC community as well.
And we want to say if any other teams would like to chat with us about how they felt they performed and how they feel they could perform into the future, feel free to reach out to us, Rob_Flax and Frank Salerno_ on Twitter. Reach out to us. Let us know. We'd be happy to have you speak with us.
All right, so we teased earlier that we were going to touch on the finals and give you more of an in-depth look at how the final matchup happened between Stockton and Team Bootleg. So, Rob, let's start up first on both sides. Who had the most impact for the teams that we saw play?
All right, so I guess that's how you want to define impact, because number one, the top fragger and the second fragger were both on the losing side.
Yeah.
Both Stockton with Matthias and Large One taking those spots, and they just had a ton of impact. They had the most goal generated, the most kills, and the most assists, obviously generating those top and second frag positions.
Yeah.
But they were just extremely invaluable. Every single time Matthias got an operator, he seemed to have gotten 1 kill, 2 kill, 3 kills, up to 4 kills, I think, in one round.
Yeah, we saw him do it with the Marshall, too. We saw him do it with the Marshall earlier in the game
didn't even
as well.
need those one-body headshots. He was ripping it down A-long with those Marshall shots, too. So, I mean, he's definitely a gold-efficient player. Every time he made it count, he got a lot of good corner picks, and even peeking sight from windows, he was able to get a couple of crucial headshots. Definitely made it a much closer series than it otherwise could have been. He really, I feel like those two, Large One and Matthias, they had the whole team on their backs, carrying them up the mountain, but unfortunately not carrying them quite to the finish line, and Stockton was still able to not quite get there. And I think Bootleg should be commended, but Frank, I feel like you have a lot to say about Bootleg and their performance, so I'm gonna let you take it here.
The two I saw that really stuck out, and the names that we saw the most kind of leading the way on the Bootleg side, were Narito and Yuki. Those two had fantastic performances, a couple major plays that I remember both of us, we were watching, and we both had audible reactions to just the amount of skill they were outputting in this tournament. And they did a great job leading their team. Returning players on the side of Bootleg showed up this time and were able to secure the championship for that roster. All right, Rob, let me ask you this. We saw a lot of bind this weekend.
Yes, we did.
Rather on Monday with the tournament on August 10th, the Valorant Tournament. How did the map play a role in the gameplay that we saw in the finals especially?
Right. So the way that bind works is you have those teleporters that let you kind of fake going to one site and then quickly rotate. And then because of the way the map is run, there's effectively 2 mid lanes. So what that means is that players are actually able to rotate a little bit quickly and getting that nail plant can be quite tricky in getting those best angles. You really have to defend it a little bit more coherently, I guess is the word for it. You can't just be throwing it down and then having your team just not peek, just sit around, wait for someone to come in, because those teleporters are there and those go off. You kind of have a certain element of both knowledge, but also element of being able to sneak it to another site. And we saw a lot of that coming in from Stockton. But once Bootleg wised up, once they had that consistent vision going down the middle lane and being able to kind of advance and push peak them a little bit more, we saw that they couldn't just frag in and smoke and outshoot them as they kind of wanted to and were able to do earlier, but couldn't continue. And on a map like maybe like Ascent, they wouldn't have been able to pull something like that off. So that's definitely a Bind specific feature of just how much actual movement is going on the map. I feel like it really facilitated that, and that's what we got to see.
Yeah, and there's a lot of great moments from the tournaments. And actually right now, we're going to hop over and take a look at some of the top plays from the August 10th ECAC Valorant Tournament.
Number 5.
Number 4.
Number 3.
Number 2.
And the number 1 play from this week, our critical hit. So those were our top hits from the tournament, but please let us know what you think. Tweet us at Rob_Flax and Frank Salerno_. Let us know what you think the best moments of the ECAC tournament were. And that's all we have for you this week on Critical Hits. I'm Rob Flax.
And I'm Frank Salerno. Thank you to the ECAC for hosting a really fun tournament. If you want more coverage of the ECAC, the NJCAA, and other collegiate esports, make sure to follow our coverage in our Critical Hits brand with interviews with players, breakdown of footage, more of a very analytical series, all of that underneath Critical Hits on Esports U Network, a 24/7 channel dedicated to collegiate esports. Right now, you can follow that at twitch.tv/esports U Network. All right. Thank you guys for watching. We'll catch you next time on Critical Hits. Have a good day.